Good morning, I'm Pastor Allen. It is Monday, August 10th, and we are looking in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 19, verses 13 through 15. And the passage we are going to look at was also previously in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 18, and this passage is also in the Gospel of Mark and the Gospel of Luke, which means it's an important teaching that Jesus wants us to learn and be aware of and practice. So Matthew chapter 19, verses 13 through 15. Then people brought little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and to pray for them. But the disciples rebuked them. Well, right here, it seems that the disciples have forgotten the lesson that Jesus taught in Matthew 18 about letting the little children come to him. Because here, scholars think, well, they were trying to protect Jesus because he was busy and he was teaching, and the disciples felt that children were an interruption to the ministry of teaching, that it was more important to teach the adults and keep the children away. Well, obviously, Jesus doesn't feel this way because he goes back and gives the same teaching that he gave in Matthew 18. In verse 14, he said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these." You know, it's interesting that the kingdom of God belongs to children. And previously, Jesus has said we should all be like children. And children have such a simple belief system. They believe simply. There's not a lot of discussion. There's not a lot of thought. They simply believe. They open their minds up to things that we might consider impossible. Because remember, nothing is impossible with God. And they open their minds up to accept that, and they're ready and willing to accept that. When Jesus saw that they were stopping the children from coming, he was angry. He was not happy. He wanted the little children to come to him and for them not to be stopped. And the main reason is because children recognize the kingdom of God easier than adults. And he says, anyone who will not receive the kingdom of God like a little child will not enter it. So that's our marching orders. When we're looking at the kingdom of God, we need to look at it like a little child would look at it. And then verse 15, when he had placed his hands on them, he went on from there. So the parents bring their children for a blessing. Jesus blesses them. He prays for them. And he tells the disciples to let them come always. And so we should be willing to do the same. We should be willing to explain the kingdom of God to children because their belief system is better, easier to understand. And unless we have a belief system like little children, we will not get into the kingdom of God. How do I know this? Well, it says over in Luke's gospel, whoever, that means children and adults, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God. So we have to receive the kingdom of God, but we have to receive it like a little child. And if we're not willing to do this, it says we will not enter it at all. That's a pretty big command that Jesus gives us. We need to receive the kingdom of God like a little child, or we're not going to enter it at all. And Jesus says this applies to everyone, whosoever, adults and children. So if you want to receive the kingdom of God, you need to receive it as a child would. And so may we become little children for the sake of the kingdom of God. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.